Just because she's upset does not mean that you have to be too. Most guys, when a woman shows up in a bad mood or emotional, especially on a date, they immediately crumble, they fall apart. They think that they need to take it onto themselves to get apologetic, to fix her, to take care of her, and what happens is they end up getting pretty overwhelmed and frazzled themselves, and this immediately kills attraction between that man and that girl. So what if you could take some of that chaotic energy and stay calm, stay grounded, use masculine leadership principles, and turn that around to make an even better date than what you might have normally been able to do? Well, today I'm going to talk to you guys about exactly how to do this. I've got a bunch of powerful notes and actionable steps here so you can stay centered and grounded whenever a woman shows up in a more emotional or aggressive state, especially when you're early on in that relationship. So you guys, again, don't lose yourself and end up losing that attraction or losing her because you did not know how to stay centered and grounded. Okay? So a lot of guys out there think that it's really beneficial to their own self-interest to adapt to the woman. They think that if she's having a really tough day, she's over emotional, that they now have to become just as emotional as she is. And I think this comes a lot from the idea of this emotional EQ. Remember that whole thing? Instead of an IQ, it was EQ, which is your emotional quotient. A lot of modern day mumbo jumbo to try to get men to behave more feminine and to behave more like women. Now, this is not to say that you can't be empathetic, but this does mean that you do not need to all of a sudden start to behave just like she does with the way that she processes her emotions. In fact, it's more important for you to do the opposite, okay? Because feminine energy is much more chaotic, anxious, over anxious, there's anxiety, and masculine energy is grounded. It's the rock, it's the mountain, it's rational instead of letting emotions take over. It's not that you don't have emotions, it's just that you're able to feel them and still remain level-headed, okay? So let me give you a quick little example here. You know, if a girl has a really bad day at work and she's just totally all over the place and is sort of in a bad mood, guys will oftentimes try to overcompensate and they end up becoming really girly in the way they respond themselves instead of maintaining calm and taking her big problem, which might be whatever happened at work, and shrinking it down. Instead, men who don't understand how to do this will try to match her energy and be overly sympathetic. They act kind of like a girlfriend or like a gay guy who just gets wrapped up into that drama. And again, it's so much more important if you as a man follow the masculine principles of staying grounded. And one of the things that I teach the most is taking a big problem and making it small. This is what, in fact, you need to do in order to get her back in her feminine and for her to see you as that leader, to trust you, and to really confide and feel comfortable around you. All right, so how can you actually do this? How do you stay cool? I'm going to walk you through 3 techniques that keep these in mind if you ever get into an interaction like this that will really, really help you. Okay, the first technique is just literally to stay calm and to stay neutral. Okay, you don't have to let her energy dictate your energy. Again, at the end of the day, you are the man, you are the leader. So just because whatever storm she's coming in on does not mean that you need to ride those winds and join her along with it. Stay calm, stay level-headed. Just take what she's giving you, listen to it, take it as information, but don't let it all of a sudden change your state of emotions. Now, this doesn't mean you're cold and that you don't give a crap. You know, it doesn't mean that you just have absolutely no empathy. That's not what I'm saying at all. But it doesn't mean that you let that energy be transferred to you. So if she's in a bad mood, now all of a sudden you get in a bad mood or you get defensive. Okay, so I've seen a lot of guys do this. Is they just are like a sponge because they've been taught throughout their whole life that men need to be more emotional, more vulnerable, instead of being taught men should stay grounded and stay rational. So again, if you find that feeling rising up inside of you, if a woman comes to the table with a lot of crazy energy, Just stay calm, stay neutral. There's no law in the world that says you need to get just as hyped up as she is. Technique number 2 is to lead with humor. Obviously, here at the Sophisticated Scoundrel, one of my favorite aspects of dating and interacting with women is to be charming, to have fun, because in my experience, love, romance, dating, it should be fun and playful, not dark, heavy, and serious, okay? So you want to lead with humor, and you can often lighten the mood with just a simple, playful comment. Something to act as a pattern interrupt. So if she's really stuck on some heavy-duty topic, you just want to add in something that's light, that can kind of flip that switch, as you would say, from being so stuck on this thing maybe that happened at work into now all of a sudden you said something that was so different, it kind of catches her off guard and causes her to laugh. Technique number 3 then is to redirect her energy, right? So I'll say this again. I always say this, is that the man is the leader for the both of you in any relationship. So you don't allow her negative or crazy or chaotic energy to lead that relationship, that interaction. It's up to you to lead that. So you want to take what she's giving you and focus on the interaction that you want to have. You decide, okay, she's coming in like this, but I want this to be a fun romantic date. So you need to take what she's doing and gently lead it towards something that will then allow the two of you to have a great date, to have a good interaction while you guys are spending time together, okay? You're not going to let her rain on the parade of this date. And, at the end of the day, she's really looking to you for that leadership to help her get out of that state, even though she might not be able to articulate that. Okay, so let me illustrate this with a personal story of my own that I had with a girl that I went out on a date with. Now, I took one for the team, and I purposely went out with a girl who I could tell was going to be more masculine, a little bit more, essentially more in her masculine. She was a little more set in her ways, but I wanted to purposely go out with this girl just to see the interaction and see how things would go. And of course, utilize the principles of masculine leadership to interact with her to see what would happen. Okay, because oftentimes, the reason why I speak so strongly about the things that I do and share with you guys in these videos is because I've just gone through it myself. Okay, so this is a perfect example of that. So I went out with this girl. I met her at this restaurant, at a bar at a restaurant. Now, I always go in and just sit at the bar and wait for them to arrive. And I usually always get there early. Now, I got there as usual, sat at the bar, and I got a message from her saying that she was there. And I said, great, I'm at the far end of the bar. She came over, and immediately the first thing out of her mouth was she said, how come you didn't wait for me at the entranceway? Isn't that what you normally do on a first date? And boom, right from the very first thing that she said, it was that really negative, masculine, bitchy energy. Okay, so how many of you guys have ever been in a situation like this? Most guys, if they were, would probably get pretty apologetic. Like, oh, I'm so sorry, I didn't know. I thought, oh, I should have done that. Yeah, my bad. Something along those lines, right? Well, what that essentially does now is puts her in control and puts her in power of that interaction. Now, I'm not saying if you do something that you really fuck up that you can't apologize, but apologizing should come in very, very rare instances. Because again, if you're leading, if you're a man who knows what he's doing is leading, there is no reason to apologize. Even if a girl gets upset, that's more on her than it is on you. So in this circumstance, again, there was nothing to apologize for. So I simply said, well, this is how I meet every date that I go out with. I wait and sit at the bar. And she kind of looked at me a little bit incredulously. Was like, really? And I said, and I just basically reassured her, like, yeah, no one else has ever said anything about this. Okay, so I'm not apologizing. I'm not downplaying. I'm not saying my bad. I'm simply saying, well, I've never had a problem with this. And didn't make a big deal of what she was saying and also downplayed it a bit, right? Then she pivoted from that to saying, well, You also never asked me where I live so we could meet somewhere in the middle. And again, these are moves a woman will make to try to see where you stand. Are you a leader or are you more of a follower beta type guy? So again, I mean, this woman was coming in hot, and I knew, like, okay, she was really matching all of those masculine traits. Your typical entitled, kind of bitchy modern woman persona, right? So, and again, I said to her, no, I never ask. I set the time and I set the date, and that's how it goes. And she didn't have much to say because I responded to her in that such a grounded manner. There was really nowhere for her to go, nowhere for her to pile on to. If I would have groveled and backpedaled and apologized, now the power dynamic is she's in control, she's in charge, and I'm just another weak, supplicating beta who, is fumbling around like the oftentimes men are portrayed on TV shows and commercials, right? But no, I stood my ground. I maintained that lead without being a jerk about it. Obviously, I stood my ground, but I just simply went, no, absolutely not. This is how I always do it, and I've never had anyone say anything about that before. Just like that, with a little smile and charm to the voice. Now, going back to the technique 3, leading with humor. I'm sorry, technique 2, which is leading with humor. And then 3, redirecting her emotional state. So obviously technique 1, I was staying calm and I was staying neutral. Wasn't letting that, sway how I was interacting with her or my body language. So I knew that I needed to lead with humor a little bit. So I did say to her, well, it sounds like I'm really ticking off everything that you're looking for in a guy. Just as a little joke, because she had already come up with those 2 complaints, right? And then she kind of like smiled a little bit. And then I went to technique 3, which is to redirect it. And I said to her, well, despite all of that, you're certainly looking really nice tonight. Boom. Once I said that, it was like a pattern interrupt. She was not expecting me to just brush off those big, hard and heavy complaints and go straight to that. And it wasn't a butt-kissy way of complimenting. It was just like, well, you certainly look good tonight despite all of that. And immediately her body language shifted. It softened. She kind of started playing with her hair. She goes, oh, okay, thanks. And she goes, oh. And then I said to her, did you have kind of a rough day today or what's going on? And she goes, no, I'm sorry. I had a busy day at work and it was hard getting over here. So immediately, because I stayed grounded in that masculine, I was persistent with my masculine leadership with her and not caving. She then, somewhere inside of her, felt comfortable enough to get back into her feminine. And this is how it is with a lot of these quote unquote modern women that men talk about, is that they do come in hot and heavy. They do have a lot of masculine energy and tendencies. And a big reason why is because very few men will stand up to them in the way that I did at that particular moment. They will backpedal, they will apologize, they will grovel, and somewhere inside of them, they're like, not another one that doesn't know how to stand up to me, or not another one that doesn't stand firm in his beliefs. So if I were to have backed down, apologize, she then knows from that moment that she can kind of walk all over me and the respect disappears. I held my ground. I led the interaction towards where I wanted it to go, which was going to be a playful date, regardless of her, where she was coming from. And therefore she was able to calm down without me saying, calm down. And she got into her feminine. Okay. So that was just literally the opening 5 minutes of that date. There was so much tension with the way that she approached me. But again, this is not a reflection on me. This is a reflection on her, which eventually was revealed during our date and the discussion that had happened, because I found out all sorts of stuff about her, like that was from deep stuff. Now, again, stuff that is not her fault, like family traumas, family past stuff, but things that shaped how she was showing up to that date, okay? So again, this isn't a video about should you date this girl or should you not date this girl? This video is about whatever her mood is, you do not need to match it. You are the man, you lead that interaction, which is exactly how I handled that. So then throughout the date, she was actually having a lot of fun. She wanted to stay longer. By the end of it, she was smiling, having a good time, and gave me a big kiss in the parking lot. It was a nice. It wrapped up beautifully, and she was having a good time. It really seemed like finally she got to a place where she met a guy who was, able to stand up to her, made her feel more secure in her feminine, despite all the crazy stuff that had gone on in her life. Now, whether something like this would last or not with her, to be determined. If she was constantly always this combative, then obviously most men or myself would not want to continue something with a woman like that. And especially, the first time meeting to come in that hot and heavy towards me, it's obviously it's not the greatest thing. It's a pretty big red flag. But again, this video is not about critiquing whether you should date someone like that or not. It's how to maintain that leadership and emotional self-control when you are up against behavior and a woman with emotional state like this. Because this may happen with women who are good girls, who are great girls. Maybe it's a girlfriend or a wife. She hits you hard with some sort of a thing, and you just are taken. It catches you off guard, and this can happen to the best of us. Okay, so this is just essentially, if you're in a relationship already and this happens, these are great techniques to use to maintain your role as a leader, and for her to she'll still trust you, she'll confide in you, she'll let go and go back to her feminine. Now, there are some common mistakes that men will do in these situations, okay? The first mistake is over-apologizing, like I said. You're groveling, you're over-apologetic, you're trying to make yourself look like the bad guy, the loser, in hopes that she'll say like, oh, it's okay. You're trying to suck up to her by apologizing too much, okay? And like I said, it's not about not apologizing, but for a man, you just cannot be belting out apologies left and right, because you should be the leader. You should know what you're doing. Apologies are really a rare occurrence that you probably only have 2 to 3 of them throughout the duration of your relationship where you really need to deeply apologize. But otherwise, you need to redirect it and not apologize for it, because the more you do that, the quicker her respect for you goes down. This is not about being hard-headed. It's about you have to maintain that leadership role to have that respect from her. Mistake number 2 is getting defensive, okay? Saying something like, why are you even mad at me? I didn't do anything. So if she would have showed up and said, how come you didn't wait for me at the restaurant? And if I would have lost my shit and been like, well, what? Was I supposed to? I didn't say I'd meet you there. Like, what's your problem? Why not just come inside and find me? Okay, that would have been getting defensive, and boom, game over. I would look like a real chump. I cannot maintain any emotional self-control, and she's going to be like, God, what a fucking loser. The third thing is to take her mood personally, okay? And what that means is that, oh, she's upset, she's really mad at me, so that just means this is game over. She doesn't like me, I fucked up, and there's no way I can save this date or this interaction, this relationship. You take it so personally. That is a mistake, okay? You have to separate a woman's emotions and how she feels about you at any given moment, because at that moment she may have been upset because I didn't meet her at the front, but it had nothing to do with me. It was more about her and her feelings of, whatever bad situation she was coming from in the past, because she did share those with me during the day with other guys, and she's attributing those past things to, me not meeting her in the front, and somehow thinking that means that I'm a jerk or a bad guy, which is completely irrelevant to that, right? So just because she's had these past experiences has nothing to do with me personally. Obviously, I know that I'm going to be a way better choice than any other guy that she's gone out with. Not in a cocky way, but I know so much more than, I've studied, I've devoted so much of my life to this stuff that I know how to interact with a woman in a way that makes her feel like a woman. So therefore, like I said, at the end of this date, she was carefree, having a good time. We shared a kiss. It ended up really great, okay? So, again, don't take her mood personally. Her mood is her own thing. You maintain, you're the rock, you're the mountain, and you establish the tone. You need to lead that interaction to go to where you want it to go. All right, so essentially then, for those of you guys out there, is just to remember, you are the man in that dynamic, in that between you and her. Obviously, you're the man, and the man is the leader of the relationship, regardless. You might have just met her, you may have been going out for a couple of years. You're always going to be the leader. She's going to see you as that, even though she might not be aware of it or say that explicitly. Just know that you are the leader, so you have that ability and you have that authority, and you should move it to where you want it to go. Okay, when you do not crumble, when you don't lose your shit and get all apologetic, or get emotional and yell back at her, what you're doing is you're showing her, hey, I'm grounded, I have my shit together, this steadiness is the way it's going to be. She can then latch onto that and feel that same steadiness and start to calm her own nerves. You're leading her by example, and you're leading her with your own emotional state. Okay. And then when you go from, like I said, when she came up to me, she was hot and heavy and upset. But because I was able to smoothly transition it to something a little bit more fun, I had that pattern interrupt of complimenting the way she looked. I led that towards a fun, playful date. I didn't let her mood dictate how that night would play out. And this is exactly what you all, as men, need to understand and do in your own relationships, in your own life. It could be with coworkers or friends or whoever it happens to be, even family members that are female. If you guys are struggling with anything along these lines and you're like, you know what, I've tried to figure this out for so long, I can't, I want that extra guidance, I want that accountability, there's a link down below. Click that. It's for a free consultation call with me. We'll discuss what's been holding you back, where you're getting stuck, and if it seems like a good fit for the two of us, I will walk you through how my coaching program works. All right? So that'll do it for this video. I will see you in the next one.